Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hang on, I have to fix my audio.
Good to see you, Megan. Welcome aboard.
Hi. Nice to see you as well.
Right, this is a little better. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. And we have two, not one, but two new people here today. I should have cut my hair and.
Haha. I've never been able to make these meetings, I was saying, because they were at 8 a.m. Pacific, but because of the time zone, the time change happening ahead here in Canada, we're good for a few weeks.
Yeah, that's
Very
why I
nice.
was a little confused because my 11 a.m. it turned out was only 3 a.m. in the UK, 3 p.m. in the UK.
Yeah, this time zone change is one of the strangest things humans do. So Megan, I can see your name and you, and then I can only see LUCB. So could you
Yeah, that's Luke.
calculate it to a full name, please?
Luke Baudouin, I'm in the first book,
Yes.
the manifesto.
Well, your name is kind of easy to recognize. The Luke B, not so much. Would you like to both briefly introduce yourselves? I'm not sure if there will be other people here today. Let's see, we're 3 minutes past. Okay, I am recording, by the way. You're okay with that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, Megan.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. I am a PhD candidate in law. Actually, I'm in my final year, so I am busily finishing my dissertation, actually. My thesis is, and most of my research is on sort of the limits of text being the limits of legal expression. So a lot of my earlier research was on sort of intersection of law and linguistics, but part of what I do now is actually, and my dissertation was on the digital encounter. So what happens when you're migrating the law from natural language to programming languages? And I looked into sort of written legal texts, 3 case studies on the kind of main legal sort of written text, which is contracts, case law, and legislation. So yeah, and of course, given that this is the future of text, this is very much into my interests and kind of my an area that I want to look into further. So thanks so much, Peter, first of all, for inviting me, and Frode for extending the invitation as well. So yeah.
Oh yeah,
happy to be here.
and when you started talking like that, I just wanted to make sure I actually had invited you, because that's absolutely brilliant. I'm just turning the camera off a little bit because I'm finishing a little snack. It's a bit distracting for you guys to have this going on. But very, very nice to have you here. Luke, you want to give a few
Sure.
words? Yeah.
Well, I can't match Megan's legal credentials, although my mother, my brother, and my sister are all lawyers. I didn't quite make the grade. I'm a cognitive scientist and a developer. So I have, I'm at Simon Fraser University in cognitive science and education, and I've got a business called CogSciApps, which develops software called Hook, which is a hypertext enhancing piece of software, which basically connects information resources from arbitrary applications first on the Mac, but we're going to all platforms. I've written a couple of cognitive productivity books, which are about using information in a manner that accords with, well, it's kind of inspired by cognitive science, if you will, with the view of of improving one's overall effectiveness. So it's kind of ambitious. And I'm interested in also in learning from text. So I've developed a concept called productive practice, which combines deliberate practice, test enhanced learning, et cetera, research and expertise in education to learning with technology for regular knowledge workers. That's kind of a mission of mine. And I do research and development in other areas as well, but that sums it up. Oh, I should say, I published in the first book, the Future of Text, the first edition of the Future of Text, a chapter called something like a manifesto for hyperlinking, and we're working on, and I want to mention this, an online version of this. It's kind of simplified version, a manifesto for ubiquitous hyperlinking. So if anybody's interested in that, they can get in touch with me. There's a number of developers and influencers who are on board. co-authoring this document. Then we'll go for signatories. The idea is like doing for hyperlinking what was done for the Agile Manifesto in around 2000. So it's very structured formally similarly to that. Yeah. Super. Yes, please get in touch. I'm easy to find on the web. Luc Baudouin is a bit hard to spell, but just look for Hook Productivity and my first name, LUC, or Cognitive Productivity and Luc. You can find me very easily.
And in the book.
And in the book, the easiest thing to do is actually go through the PDF and just, I think I'm the only Luc in there. Sorry.
So on that kind of introductory note, we are looking now to make a home on the web. I've got an account now for us at circle.so. So in terms of getting in touch, hopefully we'll be able to use that soon, and I'll see what that's like. Nest Labs and other communities have homes there. So why not people talking about the future of text?
Super.
Very good.
I'm fascinated, Megan, by your main thesis, because it's easy to talk about the Whorfian stuff of the limits of thought and language and all of that. And then you have programming on the other side, which is it thought, is it language? All of that can be discussed over a coffee. But to have, in a sense, I guess, legal text in the middle is really, really fascinating to see how that is defined in this way. So very, very interesting topic.
Yeah. On that note, Megan, I'm interested in gesture and cognitive things like remembering stuff. So it's kind of, there's an overlap there, I think, which is gesture being non-textual.
Yeah, I think there's rising literature in people in sort of sociolinguistics and looking at kind of courtroom cues and how narratives are being shaped. So this is non-textual. This is all kind of like what sorts of communicative signals that are offered by legal players that sort of direct jury or layman into kind of various, I guess, almost responses, and whether or not sort of you're constructing a narrative as opposed to presenting facts. So it's it's definitely very interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to
it extends a little bit beyond what I'm doing at the moment, but it doesn't preclude kind of where I want to go eventually. I've been working sort of closely with a linguist, just so that everything I kind of write is not, I know that sometimes in the legal field or the legal community, people tend to think that we possess all the knowledge we need already, but I kind of prefer interdisciplinary learning. So I love actually connecting with people in different fields, so that I think it makes for richer, more dynamic dialogue, and
absolutely,
I guess in general, more fruitful outcomes of what you want to look into.
Yeah. I've also got an interdisciplinary manifesto somewhere. It's integrative design, or a manifesto for integrative design oriented cognitive science. So I'm on to 2 manifestos, and then there was another one published that I want to sign, which is a different story. But anyway, apparently I'm a manifesto kind of guy. But the interdisciplinary angle is really a lot of fun, and cognitive science, well done, is meant to be interdisciplinary. If you look, if you look in like Wikipedia, often it's people are specialized, but I think in its best forms, people are have expertise in each discipline, not just multidisciplinary, which is bringing experts from different disciplines, but actually the researchers themselves trying to, think in terms of each discipline. That's the key idea.
Yeah.
When you're ready to have outside readers take a look at your dissertation, I'm sure that we'd all like to have a look at it and provide input for you.
Yeah, that's really, really kind. I'll have to keep everyone in the loop if you are interested in reading it. I have a sort of deadline for submission in August, so actually it's coming up very soon. In May, my supervisors have encouraged, but in a very heavy-handed way, that I give them a first full draft to give any kind of red flags in case I'm leading people in the wrong direction. So I think in the coming 2 months or so, if everyone is, if everyone has time to give something a read, I'd be happy to share anything.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, that would be interesting. We're in the same boat, even though vast age differences. I'm also doing a PhD, and I'm also in the last year. But it's in computer science. It's a bit more casual, I think, than what you're going through. By the way, you use the word facts. You're probably the only person, well, lawyers are the only people allowed to use that word. Because it has a legal meaning rather than what other people use. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Uh, it's I always find it really interesting because a lot of what I guess computer languages are, at least what I'm understanding, is that they look very much into logic and is kind of combination of syntax and semantics. And in semantics, you see that one of the kind of big theories is truth conditionals. And this idea, and in law, kind of there's this idea that you're there's sorts of sets of truths that you're asserting. And then there's an independently what they call the normative principles or like the legal principles, right? So there's the very fact law divide, but everybody knows that it's a myth. That facts are really just constructed in order for you to then be able to fit into these legal principles. So yeah, I'm glad that you picked that up. It's a bit of a faux pas, I guess, being in the legal field.
Well, hold on. Some of us are not postmodernist. Scientists tend to actually believe in facts. They have half-lives, but I've got Karl Popper's objective knowledge here. If I could.
I would disagree with you, Luke, if you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, you got to read the cynical. Did you read the cynical theories? The critique of cynical theories yet? It's just come out. I haven't. I bought it. I haven't read it. This is Popper. I'm a constructivist, but you can be a constructivist and a realist. I'm not a social constructivist. I don't buy the idea that it's all socially.
I'm not saying everything is socially constructed, but what I am saying is the word fact, the etymology, does come from the legal world, where, if I'm not mistaken, it refers to a crime or an act, the facts of the matter, so on. When it comes to science, no, I don't believe there are scientific facts. There are scientific data, of course there is, and there are scientific theories, of course there is. But once you have scientific facts, you shut down any future investigation.
Well, Google the half-life of facts, and you'll see that opinions differ. So at any given time, there's data and fact can more. Data is a kind of data are kinds of facts. Facts could be more general than data, but anyway, yeah, Google, the half-life of facts, and you'll see that a lot of people believe that facts, as if, the fact they exist, but they don't last forever. So that is contrary to some very hard realistic ideas. And the other thing is that facts and theories go together. So what the fact is depends on your theory. They're not independent. The same data can be interpreted differently in a different theory, but then it's treated as a fact then. So although fact may come, I wasn't aware that it came from law, but definitely in science, we think in terms of facts. At least many of us think in terms of facts, knowing that the facts can change.
The facts will have to speak for themselves.
That's right.
Günther, maybe you want to say a little bit about your background, because it's very relevant, I think, to this conversation at the moment. Unless, of course, you've muted us and you're just pretending to listen.
Yeah, you know me too well, so now you put me on the spot.
Yes.
This is always difficult, really. But maybe Peter would like to go ahead, because I'm trying to sort my thoughts, and maybe I'll come up with a decent introduction.
Yeah, sure. It'd be nice to hear more, even though most of us know you, Peter. Still be good to provide a bit of an intro to the context for today.
Well, I straddle the law and programming world. So I like to think in terms of ground truth, and also to be conscious of what everyone assumes to be the case, but they can't actually prove. Envisioning had a wonderful little workshop yesterday on deconstructing certainty, looking at the kinds of assumptions that we have. And of course, one of them is that scientific measurements are going to be repeatable. We assume that physical constants aren't going to change, although we don't really know. Who knows? Maybe some physical constants in the universe might be different several parsecs from here, or the constants might be measured now and then shift in 10,000 years. We don't know. They could be actually moving for all we know, but we assume that they're constant. So you have those kinds of ground truth. Then from law, you're consciously aware of the level of perception. Eyewitness testimony, notoriously unreliable. So one person's fact is really their perception of what they observed at the time under the totality of circumstances when they made the observation. Then, of course, in legal reasoning, we have the dichotomy between the logic-based statutory side, which is more like a truth maintenance system in formal logic. And then, of course, you have the case-based reasoning dynamic when you start bringing in eyewitness testimony. What are the different indicia of truthfulness in observations? To what degree can you rely on one expert versus another expert? So there's a lot of nuance there. And because we've had legal training, you're more able to recognize that and see how the two different classes of argumentation fit in. It'd be really nice, I think, in the future if we had automated tools to help us construct and interweave those two kinds of narratives. I always come back to Stuart Allen Sutton's long lost dissertation from when he was getting his PhD in library science, where he was talking about just that sort of a system. But because he was describing a system to provide an institutional memory for a law firm back in an era before we had open source software, the ability to actually implement it or do experiments like we can do so readily now wasn't there. So his dissertation is a nice blueprint and has design mock-ups of what a user interface might look like, but nothing ever happened to it and became one of those orphan technologies that's fallen by the wayside over time that hopefully will be rediscovered anytime.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not a law person at all, but as I was saying earlier to Megan, writing is thinking, or at least that's what I meant to say. So to have it in a discipline where there is a lot at stake and you have good training, obviously language becomes something else. And yeah, it's an interesting situation. One of the key things that I learned and relearned on writing and editing the Future of Text book is that text is different in different situations. I know it's very, very obvious, but to try to talk about text as being a thing in and of itself is completely meaningless. It's like talking about an image without deciding if it's a photograph or a painting, a screen grab or a crayon thing or whatever it is. The same thing with text. So this idea of legal text, I'm hoping there are things that you guys are doing that can come into the wider environment for more rigor in how we deal with it. And what really excites me about the legal side of text is it's human, because what pisses me off about the computer side, and Gunther, I know you agree with me, is there seems to be a fashion now for people to make a knowledge graph. Take a bit of text, take another bit of text, draw some lines and some stuff. And apparently that's my perspective. Here's your perspective. We put them together, we understand each other. I get so angry with that waste of time, because clearly it's the interaction that really helps with the meaning. Within specific areas of science, look, of course it's useful to map disciplines and so I saw you moving ahead there. So there are many cases where it is useful, but as it's
I didn't mean to disagree. I'm interested in what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing.
No, that's okay. But I'm just saying that
it's interesting. Yes.
Yeah, there's some mapping, but you know, humans are the ones at both sides of the text.
Yes, absolutely. I actually, while you were, I was just trying to think of recent discussions on a similar topic. Basically, yeah, discourse, the importance of discourse. I mean, it's, yeah. Anyway, no, I don't have a problem with what you're saying.
Don't worry, I didn't think that was a big one.
But if you did, I don't mind talking about it.
Yeah. So, Gunther, that was as much of a pause as you get.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, it was very interesting to hear your introductions, and to be honest, maybe today is one of these days where I simply don't know what to say. Let's so well. How to start? I don't know. Hmm. I guess you have to be careful with ambitions. That's so. I mean, I could sum up this whole introduction perhaps and just saying what I want to do, but I'm not courageous enough to attend this. But anyway, so I got interested in the future of text community and hypertext, and so this eventually when I contacted Fode and. What is really important to me is the infrastructure of text and hypertext. So we have all these great ideas and so many applications for text and in so many areas. And yeah, what matters to me is how to build a sustainable system where we can actually try out different kinds of ideas. And that is a very well, it's very vague on the one hand, but on the other hand, yes, it's also very difficult endeavor. So I'm very much interested in the personalization of computer systems, and I am a big fan of LNK's research. And so what I did in the past years is just to figure out what they really tried to achieve at Xerox PARC, what personal computing really means, especially in a world where that seems to be dominated by by corporations, startups that supply services to you. But the situation now, I think, because to me it's important. What can I do? What can an individual do with a computer system? And so these are the things that interest me. And of course, there are very important relations to text and programming, different forms of programming, which I've been investigating. And I hope that very soon I will have a demo to demonstrate some of my ideas, because because at some point I realized that you need to deliver, and so this is what I'm working on actually, and maybe in the next meetings we'll have some demonstrations. I don't know. It wasn't a very good introduction, and probably you don't know much more now, but that's the best I can do for today. So I'm very sorry.
It's great to meet you, Gunter. And you've made me curious.
It's great to meet you too, and thanks.
It's great to meet you all as well. Yeah.
Yeah, good to meet up. I saw an annotation today that was attached to a document. It said vague but interesting. Excuse me, vague but exciting. That was Tim Berners-Lee's proposal to his management. Make the web. So
vague but exciting. Interesting.
Vague but exciting, yeah. So Gunter, that's what you just gave us, vague but exciting. So we're looking forward to more specifics.
You know, those annotations of ideas, and there's vague but exciting. That's a great phrase. I have to remember that, given that it's what it's about. And then there's promising. So promising, but for promising, you need to have less than vague. It has to be a bit more specific, but you're not sure about it. I like promising. I think that the brain has these mechanisms for detecting a few different dimensions of value of information: caliber, utility, potency, and appeal. Those are, in my framework, the big ones.
Getting that quote for you. I didn't hear that. Please say it again.
Oh, okay. So the brain assesses information multi-dimensionally, and dimension is actually not the right word, because when we think of dimensions, we think of quantity, but a lot of these assessments that we make are qualitative and relational. I classify them as caliber, utility, potency, and appeal. I think it's important to distinguish the four. I think that in previous taxonomies, like ways of assessing information, they didn't quite capture that. And I was saying, yeah, that these attributes, vague but exciting and promising, are the bridge. It's not just one of those dimensions. Yes, go ahead.
Where would you put affordance in that?
The affordance of information, utility, I would think. So utility, there's personal utility, and then there's more general utility to the world. So utility in this framework is more about the useful, as you're assessing information, we make decisions about whether to attend a meeting like this one, whether to read a document, etc. So there's some of these assessments draw us into the information, and some of them are assessments that we make as we're processing the information to figure out, well, should we continue, and what will we do with the information? Yeah. So affordance has to do with go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, some of these ideas are sort of kind of provoking thoughts on, there's been a discussion, I think a while back, on footnotes in legal literature. So if you look at a lot of articles that are written in legal texts, there's like billions of footnotes, and there's like thousands of different ways that you're supposed to format them. And I think one thing that Gunter raised that just made me think is kind of, are there different like categories of text and annotation? So when you have to include these citations in the future of text, is it that we don't actually need these various citation formats anymore, because we're able to very quickly, or like hyperlink has kind of taken precedent, and that nothing else, that we didn't need to be a stickler and kind of like exactly where we're able to pin cite very quickly. Yeah,
I have thoughts on this topic.
Interesting.
The one answer is definitely yes. The anal behavior of the academia being so obsessed with cosmetics is completely messed up. There's no question about that. So even in a normal document, it should be able to re-render in whatever format the reader prefers. And it's important, if you're used to some format, if it's better for you, fine, have it, but don't make students suffer. It's such a waste of productivity. But when it comes to the bigger picture of this, the quotes from the web that I just put in, the web proposal I just put in the chat, is from a book called The Annotation that's coming out, I think, this month from MIT. They sent me an advanced copy, and I have no idea why. I'm super honored to get it. But as Peter and I particularly, and also Gunter in the group, the notion of paratexts is really, really, really important, and it's very, very not well understood. My PhD is partly about citations going digital, and links are absolute horrible. Even just a few years ago, earlier versions, my upgrade paper, many of the references there are dead already. It's unbelievably pathetic. So when Gunter was talking about the infrastructures, it really, really is important, both the technical infrastructures, and I work on something called visual meta, but also the interaction styles, and to get to be in an environment where we can truly design through research and testing to find out what these things are is important, but to make it physically possible is really, really hard. So the answer is, I don't know, but we need to find out.
Actually, what you just mentioned made me think that, like, you said a lot of those links that they're already at this point dead, and that you actually can't go back to them anymore. I think that's very important going forward for all types of legal documents, because one thing that people keep mentioning is the lack of interoperability, or understanding the connections from one document to another. So in a piece of legislation, for example, how it trickles down to contracts or other types of written legal text, it's sort of lost communication in a way. And if we're able to actually create better embeddings or citations that can fortify the legal ecosystem, and this is done through text, then actually it makes the whole system a lot more efficient and a lot stronger in general, because people are not making these mistakes by just kind of using copy paste over and over, and again worrying about things like the cosmetics, as you mentioned. So yeah, those are really, really important points that you raised.
Yeah, I
One
mean,
thing that always struck me is that the legal community could learn so much from module systems and programming languages. Instead, we have separate dozens of partial definitions of things instead of having libraries of reusable definitions so that all the different legal documents could be citing in to the same definition. You could import a context into your legal document. You could also capture the dependency relationship so that if something does get upset by a change in case law or by a new piece of legislation, you'd automatically see that propagate through the system. And you could even take that into account when you're writing a piece of legislation, when you're writing it. So you could be aware that the underlying legal framework that the legislation is making assumptions about could shift under its feet and automatically have provisions deactivate themselves without having to go back through the whole litigation and dealing with the politicians. When they did in the first place, they should address what happens if any of the fundamental assumptions behind this document change, either in the legal world or in the real world. Say we have a bill and we say, you're going to be able to keep your doctor and it's going to cut your medical costs in half, and that's not happening. You shouldn't have to go and try to assemble a legislative majority to go back in and fight to create a new piece of legislation to undo what should have been built in to the original legislation as an automatic repeal provision.
yes, kind of. There is a little kind of there. At the end of his great magnum opus, Bertrand Russell wrote, in Melancholy, he wrote that human knowledge is vague. And having read some of that at the same time and reading The Problem of AI, including Rebooting AI, a wonderful book, it seems to me that, and Luke, I hope you'll keep nodding, being human is being vague. It's really a benefit. So if you want to make proper AI super smart, vagueness is what you have to teach AI. I'm lucky enough to have a wonderful 3.5-year-old boy, and to see him learn advanced concepts, advanced if he thoroughly understood them, but he learns them to a level that he can deal with. So, so here we're kind of getting back to some of the beginning of the discussion. Many concepts, like for Mother's Day, they made a video at nursery, and he said, "I love my mommy because she plays with me after she works." He has no idea what work is, but he has a workable definition that for his context holds at this time. So that's why the two issues here would really see what you guys think. One of them is addressability. So this is also very much what you were talking about, Peter and Megan, how these legislations or laws or cases connect is really, really important, absolutely. And also the interactivity. And I think interactivity is the human threshold we're really standing on. I remember Doug Engelbart once made a comment. He'd read somewhere that a clean desk is a clean mind, and he said he must be really muddled because he had a muddled desk. But of course, it was his mess, right? We make our own mess. So what we really have to do is work on super powerfully interactive systems. So what Megan and Peter is talking about is no longer really an issue, because it cannot be pre-done for us to all levels of usefulness. But to get to the level where what you're talking about, how does this relate to that? How can I follow this trail is actually possible questions for you to ask in a meaningful way. That's the kind of infrastructure Gunter's looking at. So addressability and interaction, and I really hope parts of the new book will be on that.
One of our biggest mistakes was getting.
Just getting a big phone call.
One of our biggest mistakes was getting pinned on page numbers of bound legal volumes.
Gunter's frozen screenshot. Sorry, that was quite epic. Yeah, please go on, Peter. Sorry.
Yeah, when we became dependent upon page numbers as fixed by commercial publishers in order to determine where you're citing into legal document, that was a huge mistake. We should have had sort of a logical page division every so many words, or something that would be independent of who the publisher was reproducing the court opinion. So that was a major wrong turn that we took early on.
Yeah, interesting point.
Well, wasn't it wasn't it like good at the time? What were did we have alternatives at the time?
Well, at the time we were dealing with ink on paper publishing, and the overhead of setting up a publishing house was so high that we just defaulted with, okay, the court will bless one publishing house as being the official publishing house. And yeah, it was an optimal decision for the time period. But it makes no sense in a digital world.
Well, in the digital world, it's worse in most cases. You can't even refer to a page number in a PDF easily. And of course, the PDF doesn't even know what date it was published. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we just built into Hook the ability to hyperlink to specific page. Actually, we leverage other. If a PDF app has an API to get to specific page and location, then we provide a uniform gesture to get to that exact location in the document. So we can open the document, get to that exact location. The thing is that works well for an individual, and we have introduced some mechanisms for sharing, but then it becomes heuristic at that level. Like, because documents tend to exist, at least for researchers, and I think most writers, we make local copies of our PDFs. And so the notion of a URL is no longer, it's not a standard, it's not a universal address anymore. It has to be in terms of your particular system. So anyways, that's a problem that we deal with.
A given PDF might have been downloaded from one of a dozen different servers or more. So the PDFs, like the Mac, will attach metadata on what the URL was that the PDF was pulled from, but that's not necessarily the same URL that someone else's copy of the exact same file was done.
Yeah.
Then, I wrote a blog post about a year ago about the most maddening feature of all the different web browsers on the Mac. When you download a file and the file has the same name as an existing file, they all have different conventions in how they rename it. And the number of people out there who publish papers under the file name paper.pdf or
is that crazy?
PDF is utterly maddening. I just want to scream, and they should be taken out in the streets and flogged publicly when they name their files that. It's happened so many times to me.
Not so much to depend on the name, but a reference manager will rename it according to your preferred conventions. But there's a notion of DOI. So I'll leave that. I'm sure that Frode, can I get the pronunciation of your name? Is it Frode? Do you pronounce the E at the end?
As long as you promise never to swear ever again. You said reference manager. Evil, vile monster crap.
What about BibTech, BibDesk, and BibTech?
You may say that in polite company, but
that's what I'm moving to. I made the error of not learning LaTeX when I was a graduate student. The biggest mistake of my life. I've been flipping from one system to another for a lifetime. It's been hell.
Yeah.
But now I'm saying, okay, I'm in my 50s. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and at least learn BibTech and use BibDesk. No?
No.
I find myself diving into LaTeX internals now more than any human should have to look at. But I have a writing project. I want to get a specific look. And in order to do that, I've got to create my own document class. And I've got to figure out what order to load different libraries in because there's just one global namespace and different packages
heard of
all over each
InDesign?
other.
Just use InDesign.
That's massively more that makes LaTeX look simple.
No, it doesn't.
Mark Anderson.
It depends what your experience is. I mean, I have a foot in both camps. I must say, I did for my final thesis. I did a very rapid learning of LaTeX, mainly simply because other tools as yet. So, for instance, Word, which is what a lot of people amazingly still write theses and things in. It's when you need more complex diagrams and stuff. If you're just doing text, if you're probably doing a humanities thing, it would be fine. And but I agree. One of the things that Fred's tools are dealing with is this. But some of the more complex stuff still, unfortunately, needs these sort of gnarly tools. That said, I'd be very upset if eventually the need for something like LaTeX went away. Or was something encapsulated that you never had to worry about.
It's an illustration tool. If you want to make an, oh God.
LaTeX is just wonderful. I'm reaching in to LaTeX libraries from the linguistics community so I can do interlinear glosses on computer language source code. And dealing with parallel text side by side and linking LaTeX just has so much capability in it. But again, the learning curve and dealing with it, it's a whole world of itself.
Just to be clear, I was just referring to the BibTeX aspect, which is like the LaTeX as the whole big. I'm going to avoid that. I want to write in Markdown and Markdown with, but I need a way to better manage my references that will not go away. Like I was using Papers, and then they went online. Like they expect me to put all my PDFs online. Give me a. I'm not allowed to swear. Give me a break. Can you imagine having to put all your PDFs online to some commercial company?
Not to mention the copyright implications.
Well, the copyright, the privacy in Canada, we have strong privacy laws. Like I've got all kinds of things. Goodness only knows, research document. If it's useful, I convert it to PDF.
Well, I mean, that's the good thing about, Freud's visual meta. I mean, it's one of the reasons it's using BibTeX, because of the available things. I mean, BibTeX, I would say, is much more readable than RIS, which is the other sort of pan reference plain text system. But because it uses obscure old database codes that most people don't know, and they're quite hard to look up, in fact, BibTeX seems, the best compromise. And, there's a bit verbose and things, but at least you can understand it. And I'll mention that word. I use a reference manager. I use Bookends, but I actually do all the imports.
You have to mute yourself.
When I'm importing, I invariably use BibTeX if I can get hold of it, because I mean there are two separate parts to the referencing. There's one that is just having some correct data, which is hard enough, and again, which one thing that the part of the original sort of source of the conversations that led to visual meta was let's get out of this little cycle of crap citations, and the other thing is that you can see what's in there and correct it if it's wrong. So I find that my reference manager, for the sake of example, there are two large things. Taylor and Francis is one where the names always come in back to front, because actually BibTeX is quite lenient in the way you can describe the authors. So it's rather difficult. It's a bit like British telephone numbers and postcodes. I mean, trying to write a simple rule to parse them is it's like the English language full of exceptions.
So based on that, Mark, guys, can I do a 4-minute demo of what visual meta is? Because I don't think Megan and Luke knows.
Oh, sorry, I do apologize.
Cool. Well, you kind of give me the excuse to do it. So
thank you. I've read about it. I don't think maybe I've seen a demo. Let's find out. My memory being what it is.
It's a quick thing. So let me just try to minimize you guys so I can actually see my own screen. So this is the kind of stuff we've been talking about. So it's about making text more powerful by adding a few words at the end of a document. Richly interactive environments. This is the kind of stuff you all know. The key is to let documents know more about who they are, how to cite them, what they contain, and how they're structured. We want to create, I think this is what we've been talking about all day, virtual information landscapes, not just frozen pixels. So this is one of the first pages of a paper book. It's called a colophon, if you want to go far back, or you can call it the edition notice, copyright page. Here in the UK, we call it the printer's imprint. It says most of the stuff of what the book is. And of course, in a PDF, you can get info, and I'm just kidding. There is no useful metadata ever in a PDF. It just doesn't happen. It can happen, but it doesn't. So all this idea thing here is you take that kind of meta that was on the front page and you put it at the back of a document as an appendix, visually at the same level as all the other text.
Oh, you want it at the same level?
Yes.
Visual meta. Oh, I can't believe it. I've read about this and I didn't know that. Oh, you can't hear me, can you? Oh, you
can. And I can hear you. And I'm very glad you made that interjection right there, because I have presented before and that wasn't clear. So that's why I really added it this time. So thank you for showing that it was.
Well, it's called visual meta. So now it all makes sense. Wow. Wow. You're brave. That's so fun.
Brave. Thanks. But let me just walk through it a little bit. First, I just want to make clear, it's not a new standard. And we started this little demo here because you mentioned
Yeah.
BibTeX. It is just BibTeX in a new use. So there's 3 sections. The intro says, I'm Visual Meta, this is the version, this is the software that generated. And then you have an actual BibTeX citation piece for that document. This is followed by optional structural stuff. Like here, you can specify what text are headings so that the reader software can generate an outline. It can even include the author of different sections, like in the Future of Text book, this is what we've done, so that all the headings say who wrote that section. It turns out to be the same thing in that book anyway. Important to say, this tiny bit, the BibTeX is the metadata. The rest of it is actually retained structural data, meaning there's no effort at all to make it. It's free. Because, and I think this is what you were talking a little bit about, Megan, when you export a document, a lot of the data is lost. So you lose a lot of the context to look it up later. So 2 little new things. Number 1, this huge paragraph is included every time Visual Meta is made at the back of a document, so that someone who doesn't have access to us or someone in 1,000 years who come across this, they will know how to get benefit from it. It's completely open as we can make it.
So it's a bit like XML, human readable. It's machine and human readable.
Yes, the BibTeX is really, really human readable. We're also looking at how to add semantic markup to the document, but also have that be at the end of it. So here's an idea for how to define what a person or place is and so on. So yes.
I think you're right in mentioning that. The point is that had to use something BibTeX there, but if people want to put other things into it, basically anything that can be dereferenced via a reference saying this is what this glob of data I put in is, you can in principle attach anything to it.
Yes.
And it can be printed really small, because actually if a machine's going to read it, it doesn't care whether it's in 40-point text or 0.1-point text.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
yes.
They'll probably need to think of some conventions at some point as to how to stop it, making them non-printing pages or something. But it's just that fact.
No, it has to be printed. And I'll get to that in a moment, just to try to finish it quickly. So Megan, this is the bit you were talking about, partly. Appendix and annotations and all of that good stuff. There is a second part of Visual Meta that is another page where anything you've added to the document as a reader is added. So if you've highlighted certain passages, written notes, whatever it is written in Visual Meta. The reason for that is it's not just a mark on a page. It becomes semantically useful for searching in the future. So you can say, go through all my PDFs and show me every sentence that has the word chocolate in it. So briefly, the benefits, not that Mark hasn't said many of them. Thank you, Mark. So you get these advanced interactions while reading. You can fold the document. You have support for glossaries, endnotes. All of that stuff can be inline. Click on it, get interactions. You get augmented citing. And this is one of the things I think Peter likes within the whole legal thing. You can copy text from such a document, paste it in a word processor, and it's pasted as a citation. So it'll automatically be part of references. So it's no longer just copy and paste in a dumb way. And the important, exciting future thing is enabling computational text. So you can write a mathematical equation, or you can refer to different things. Like you should be able to refer in the law world, I guess, to different laws as certain things. If they change, is updated on the page and so on. Yeah, this is about servers having access. But final things. It's legacy safe because it's just text at the end of a document. It's not a technical thing. It's literally just text. I made the Future of Text book in InDesign, and I manually made the Visual Meta for it, just typed it in. So it is so robust that you can print it out, scan it, run optical character recognition, and you've lost absolutely no data.
We really should do a LaTeX package for supporting Visual Meta.
No, you can do that. That's my beautiful boy. I want him to grow up with this working. Anyway, so that's that.
One of the other things that sort of fed into this was the idea that, well, this is more work in the round. If everyone suddenly said tomorrow, right, we're going to do this, if you're a publisher, there's going to be some extra work. But one of the driving thoughts here was there's an upside to the publishers, because if you think of it, if you get into a cycle where you've got less checking to do, you can more easily check the references as they come in. And then once you know they're there, then they can magically just go straight on into all your servers and everything. In other words, you're slowly cleaning out the citation chain, which we all know is somewhat unclean at the moment. And you don't worry about going to look up a reference and then find that actually, it's either not there at all, or it's not what it's listed as. So visual meta in that sense is helping basically clean out, at least going forward anyway, clean out sort of, citation chains and papers.
What will students on law review do with all the extra time now that they won't have to be manually checking the formats of citations?
Good question. One of the strange things about looking at the, that kind of front page here in books is that it hardly ever has the title of the book. Just as a little detail of how the way the world is set up now, there are so many expectations. They expect you to have looked at the previous page, which is the title page. So as we go more and more digital, as we discussed earlier, we really need to rethink this stuff. And, I'm very much for documents. A document is a thing, whether printed or in a computer. It is a self-contained, published perspective. We shouldn't just all go into a database or social media or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, the self-containing aspect is important if you want to be able to, and you want to be able to reference it, and not have to go off into the Wild West. One aspect of this, I think we converged on a similar idea in about 2001, I think. I was developing business plans, and I had an idea which just seems like it's very similar to what you've got, which is that maybe we even exchanged emails about this, which is that when you approach a document, you should be able to decide your style sheet. And you should be able to determine the extent, how much of the document you want to see ultimately, ideally, right? And even ultimately, I'm interested in learning. So I should be able to basically specify my grade, perhaps checkbox some of the content that I want to master. And then this document will reshape itself to ensure that that was an idealistic thing, that the document will reshape itself along with content, which should always, in my opinion, be somehow associated with the document, which is the set of questions or a set of questions that you need to be able to answer in order to have mastered that document. So I call them challenges to make it more general than just questions, because they might be exercises. And if the document's referenceable, then those challenges could exist elsewhere. That you can, in a while, you can Google, you can search for challenges associated with the particular document. Anyway, so there's this idea that you can grab the table of contents and interact with it, and the document will reshape. Like, I just want to go to a certain level. So how does that map onto your visual meta? Did you look at that? Like,
we have looked at that quite a lot. This is something that Mark Anderson and Chris Gatorjami talked about over coffee many times, and I've mostly gone away from that notion.
Okay.
Because I think that if someone wants to author a fantastic reading or learning resource, fantastic. So if they want to make such a document, that's fantastic. But just like the act of authorship, we have to look at in different levels, right? My background is visual. I can edit a video, do 3D stuff, all of that, because I spent the time and I have that inclination. I can't code for the life of me. Gunther and Peter can do things that I would never be able to do. My brain just won't support it. So it becomes very much authorship. So if you're doing the kind of document you're talking about at the different levels, if you're really good at distilling it down to, let's say, a child's level, relatively speaking, why then would you need to convolute it for a PhD student if the knowledge is already there? You get into so many interesting issues that for a specific authored work, sometimes would make sense, sometimes wouldn't make sense. So that's why I really think the idea of interactivity You know, you get given a document that's well created by that creator, but you have the means to do the kind of stuff you talked about in the beginning, like show me an outline, show me the first sentence, show me only stuff that's also written in about this other person's paper, all those types of things. Yes, absolutely. Yes, Mark, no surprise there.
Just add that not sort of not to counter what Fred's saying, but actually the visual meta concept does allow for sort of what Luke's just mentioned. I know Chris Guttridge was very interested in basically being able to sort of say that, you know, if basically, you know, here I'm referring to this concept. If you want to know what this concept is, if you need to know more. So, but that in a sense is all becomes digital metadata. So the difficulty becomes how much you put in the document and how much not. But if you look forward to a digital time, actually it doesn't matter, because you stop to think about it. As long as something is a dereferenceable resource, it doesn't have to be actually in that document, however we define it in a digital sense. But, you know, in a sense, you can easily see more. So your general idea of being able to unpack the construction or the thinking behind a document is certainly allowed for. And I mean, in a sense, it comes for free, riding on the back of the visual meta.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Visual meta can be used, but there are other means, as they would say
Sure.
in the BBC.
Yeah.
A little bit of the whole thing, I got fired up when Megan was talking in the beginning of annotations and glossaries and all of that kind of stuff. This system does support glossaries, and it does support not footnotes, because that's stupid, but endnotes. You know, you don't need a footnote in a digital document because you get it through clicking on the little thing, right? You know, I've done my thing. I think it's good. I'd love for you guys to try it. But seriously, we need a big dialogue on what should be the main body of the document. How can glossaries interrelate? What are notes? I mean, it's a big topic, and it is very, very important. I mean, the glossary, the perspective I came was Doug Engelbart's idea of a glossary simply being a local definition, nothing more fancy. So I want to be able to write a document that say, I went to unit today and Mark was there, we had a coffee. But all of those words are in the glossary. I have defined myself, many documents, you don't know who wrote them. And I've defined Mark as Mark Anderson. And I've also defined uni as being the University of Southampton. So when someone reads it, they should be able to, through whatever means, expand that. Or if they know me or the subject matter, not expand it. So that is a part of what you're talking about, Luke, that I agree with. But you have to decide where you're putting that extra stuff and how you're going to reuse it or not. And this is where our programming friends comes in with the logic of libraries and so on.
Well, I went on after that to write a book, not about that concept, although the concept was in my head. And I really believe in productive practice challenges, but lo and behold, did I have a glossary in there? I may have, I can't even remember if my first book, which is more academic, had a glossary, but I didn't include the productive practice challenges. The book was 103,000 words. I was kind of exhausted and needing to do other things. So the challenge of that, but it's, oh my goodness. So it seems like it has to be outside of there. That's why I mentioned the Google thing, is that if somebody had created the challenges, there needs to be a discovery mechanism, I think. So that means you need to be able to identify my book, okay, the cognitive productivity book, and then so somebody could type that into a search engine, and then the challenges that somehow people need to be able to find challenges related to that, so that they can then put it into a system that can use the challenges. I wrote a blog post about the challenges part in 2013, before any of the software had flashcards, and then, coincidentally or not, probably just a coincidence, Amazon added flashcards to the Kindle. But there, the questions are now I can't remember now. Are they all self-authored? Maybe the author can create flashcards. On the iBook side, now book side, it's the author who can add questions. Well, anyway, we need a format for these challenges that can be put into software, and that those challenges need to be associated with somehow with the book. Anyway, yeah. And that's just one aspect of it. Obviously, the glossary part that you're talking about is an important thing. But again, I guess my main point originally in this little blurb when I started talking is that it's that as an author, it's just it's a bit of work. Once you've written your book, you know, an author is not necessarily a teacher. He's not necessarily somebody who's, I mean, he or she are able to express their stuff, but they don't necessarily know the general principle of transforming the information out there into knowledge that you carry around in your head, that you master.
Are you holding your hand up in an analog?
I am. Please.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just thinking in terms of the other thing about glossaries, that, and again, it's nice because all internet connects again, is as well as just being able to find a glossary, you know, the sort of understand the author's intent, is the sense of reuse. And the same arguably actually goes for bibliographies. I mean, I can't remember which forum it was in. We were discussing the fact that, you know, consider every thesis, a large part of it is a massive literature search, which is a really useful resource. But how many people read a thesis? Not many. You know, probably your mum, and if you're lucky, your supervisor. So actually making those things discoverable. And
Well, no, hang on. Making it discoverable when needed.
Yes, oh no, absolutely. Yeah, not giving everybody the whole thing so you just choke on it, but the sense of being able to, for instance, say, going to a glossary and say, I'm using this and I'm actually taking the term from this glossary here, because ideally we may end up with a sense whether some things become sort of agree, you know, again, it'll help surface agreed definitions, because there are plenty of areas right across academia where, well, in indeed professional life, where there are terms that everyone knows what they are, but they all have a different definition for it, whether they vocalize it or not.
Yes, we are way over and have a feeling that's what Megan is about to mention.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I probably have to hop off soon, but the amazing thing about actually visual metadata and the discussion on glossaries is that, of course, a lot of kind of case law hinges around interpretation on statutes and legislation. And if sort of visual metadata is incorporated into legislation, then very easily people can actually, this process of co-referencing or is kind of very visible, right? Because rather than sort of, sometimes people love to work through dictionaries. If you read some of the case judgments in the US at least, and one of my side projects right now is understanding the role of dictionaries actually in case law. So having something like visual metadata or visual meta would be an incredible, I think, step towards kind of clarifying a lot of statutory interpretation issues. So yeah, I mean, that's just one thing that I thought was really, really interesting about this.
That is, of course, very nice to hear. Before we leave, I need to know, you are a Mac user, right?
Yes, I am.
Good. Luke? Good. For this, I just put in 2 links here. One is visualmeta.info to go through as we describe it now. The second thing is to the software. I also have to run now to pick up the family. You know, this is not a forum where I'm trying to push the software, except of course it is. It's very useful for me to get dialogue on it, as the other projects we're doing, Gunther and so on. If you have a look at author specifically within the legal context, we just have a new version out today. That would be very, very interesting to see if you have perspectives. The reason I know Peter is because of author, through Mark, I think it is.
Yep.
There is an embarrassing thing with Apple. We have this new version of author, which is free, but you have to pay $15 to enable export to academic PDF. And Apple has not approved the export in-app purchase yet. So you can buy it, but you can't really use it. It's a very stressful day. I hope it'll change soon. Anyway, I hope to see you guys next week.
Yeah, this was really fun.
Yep, sorry I was late.
That's okay.
Great,
We got a life for something.
Yeah,
All right.
we meet on Mondays and Fridays, so
Yeah,
There are
so
multiple opportunities.
whatever, super casual, whatever's good. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Yep.
you as well.
take care.
Bye, thanks.
Have a great
It was nice
weekend.
chatting.
Thanks for
Bye.
joining us, Megan.